one man hoping for an early Christmas present, and the keys to number 10 is Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn. Welcome. Thank you very much indeed.
Nice to have you here.
There is a lot to talk about, so we'll crack straight on. We'll try and do this 2 or 3 very, very big subjects. Let's start, first of all, because this is in the news. People worried on the streets, worried about terrorism. You've been attacked today in the Sun newspaper by Boris Johnson, who claims that that the country is not safe under you. He says that you'll bow down to Britain's enemies. He claims that Labour leader's long history of siding with the IRA, Palestinian terrorists and the Kremlin makes him a terrifying prospect as PM. Our country's future security is at stake. Are you going to keep us safe?
Well, it's colourful and ridiculous language. Obviously, the first priority of any government is to make sure everybody is safe, and that I would absolutely do. That means making sure that our streets are safe, we have sufficient police officers, and we have proper services to back them up, and our emergency services have been cut back grievously. It also means making sure that we're reducing tensions around the world, and that means supporting peace processes and not allowing vast areas of ungoverned space to exist, like in Libya or in Syria, which are, of course, a breeding ground for terrorism.
But didn't Labour introduce the automatic release rule that allowed the London Bridge killer to walk free?
The automatic release rule was indeed introduced. My view on it is that there should be a proper psychological assessment of every terrorist prisoner before they are released, and the parole board should be involved. But the other questions are the role of the probation service in monitoring what a former prisoner does, particularly when they're on early release.
Should a terrorist serve a life sentence?
It depends what they've done.
Should life be life?
I think prison sentences should be decided by courts, and the management of the prison sentence should be also decided by a combination of the prison service. But the point I'm making very strongly is that our prison service is woefully underfunded, and the rehabilitation and the programmes to stop people being radicalised have often been insufficient in prison. And I think the lesson from this horrible tragedy is that we have to improve that. And speaking to the friends of Jack, who died in this, they say he was a great guy working very hard, which is absolutely true. And in his memory, surely, let's intensify how we treat prisoners.
You have demonstrated yourself and said similar things. Assuming that you win the general election on December the 12th, you know, Diane Abbott could be Home Secretary, and she has called for the abolition of conspiratorial groups like MI5, and you've demonstrated and said similar things.
I'm not calling for the abolition of any of our services. I am calling for accountability of our services, and that's a point I've often made in Parliament. Indeed, I want to empower Parliament to hold government to account, because I think at the moment Parliament has insufficient powers to hold government to account.
Moving on to, let's move on to the NHS, which is another big political football, vital, obviously, to many, many voters. They want to know what's going on with it. President Trump has said this morning on the NHS, I have nothing to do with the NHS. I don't know where that rumour started. If you handed us the NHS on a silver platter, we would still want nothing to do with it. In the Sun today, senior Tory Bob Seeley, an expert on Russia, says this has raised a really vital question. Has Jeremy Corbyn been an unwitting tool of a Russian disinformation campaign? This relates to the dossier which you held up.
Well, I held the dossier up because it had been released and I'd seen it, and at no stage until today, when this new conspiracy theory arose, has anyone challenged the correctness of that document, the veracity of that document.
It was allegedly downloaded from Reddit.
Well, listen, if the document is not accurate, then why is it? It's been out there all this time. No minister has claimed it's inaccurate, no government has, and in reality, the minutes are there of meetings which involved Liam Fox in the early stages and officials later on. And Donald Trump himself said everything is on the table, including our National Health Service.
You've pledged to plough in a huge amount of money into the NHS,
yes.
And you can absolutely understand why, and that sounds wonderful. However, where is that money coming from?
Well, we have to properly fund our public services, and if every every last bit of our manifesto carried out would still take us only to the level of public services in France and Germany. That's how far we've fallen behind. And it will come from a combination of tax rises for big business through corporation tax, which will go up to ultimately 26%, which is still less than it was in 2010 and actually rather less than it is in most other European countries. And the only people that feel a tax rise are those in the top 5%.
And if you do, I mean, it's sort of said that if you rise corporation tax, and that will be passed on to workers in the form of lower wages, so it will impact everyone.
No, listen, a rise to 26% is what is less than it was in 2010, less than it is in most industrial countries, actually less than it is in the United States. When I've raised this with the CBI and other business organisations, they didn't welcome the tax rise, but they said it's something that I believe they could live with.
But it has been said, and the Institute for Fiscal Studies has said, and as Holly pointed out, possibly lower wages. But I think for many people watching now, you hammer big business, prices go up. And so where you say you're going to help the many, not the few, everybody's prices go up, the rich and the poor.
Listen, if people get higher wages, which they need, if we do something about the terrible levels of child poverty and poverty in this country, people have more money to spend. That is itself an economic growth. And so raising wages is actually something that's good.
But you have no control over prices.
We have no control directly over prices. We have a great deal of influence over investment decisions and the growth of businesses across this country. And I want to invest in our infrastructure and invest in training so that we have a vibrant private sector in this country alongside our public sector.
We should discuss anti-Semitism within your party. You have come out and sort of apologised on this. It seems that this sort of has been the hardest word for you to say.
No, it's not. It's not at all. When I became leader of the party, there were no processes in place at all to deal with cases of anti-Semitism. I instituted those. Yeah. I also made sure that for egregious cases, there was a rapid system of doing it, and I proposed that to our National Executive in July. I also instituted a process of education in the party, and also people
so
understand...
why are so many people so upset then? Can you understand that?
Listen, I want everyone in this country to feel secure. There is no place whatsoever for anti-Semitism within our society. Listen, a rabbi was attacked on the streets of North London the other evening. Utterly disgusting. I've spoken to other rabbis about this over the last few days, and they say it was a horrible, horrific event, and it is, and it was. The chief
rabbi, Ephraim Mirvis, has said that Jews are justifiably anxious about the idea of Jeremy Corbyn becoming Prime Minister. A poison sanction from the top has taken root in Labour. 130 cases of anti-Semitism are outstanding against Labour member. So here is your opportunity now to apologise to the Jewish community for any anti-Semitism by Labour members.
Our party has... Our party... Can I make it clear?
Just say sorry.
No, wait a minute. I and our party...
No, just say sorry.
Can I say something?
Well,
our party...
I want you to say sorry.
And our party and me...
Yeah.
...do not accept anti-Semitism in any form.
So are you sorry for anything that's happened?
Obviously, I'm very sorry for everything that's happened. But I want to make this clear. I am dealing with it. I have dealt with it. Other parties are also affected by anti-Semitism. Candidates have been withdrawn by the Liberal Democrats and the Conservatives and by us because of it. We just do not accept it in any form whatsoever. And I think the Chief Rabbi's comments really ought to be taken for what they are. He hasn't contacted me about it. I'm very happy to meet him, very happy to talk to him, very happy to talk to any representatives of any part of the Jewish community in our society, because I recognise that anti-Semitism is a poison, and it's very dangerous, and if it's allowed to run on, you know what happens. You know the history of Europe in the 20th century. But any other form of racism is equally unacceptable, Islamophobia or anything else.
Are you just exhausted with all of this?
No.
You must be. I mean, everybody's exhausted this time of year. It's coming up to Christmas. There's so much more to do anyway. And yet you're doing this day in, day out. Aren't you just like, don't you just want to sit back and put your feet up and go, is it all worth it?
No, not a bit of it.
Why?
You get up each day and you go out and you do what you believe in. You do your campaigning.
Is there as much pride in the job? Because sometimes I think, God, for a politician, is there as much pride in your job?
I've represented my constituency since 1983, and I love the people I represent. I know many, many very, very well, of course. I know their families and so on. It feels like home and family. And I believe in public service. I believe in representing people. And I passionately believe in a country where we don't have homeless people, where we don't have food banks, where we don't have 4 million children going to school hungry or poor or unable to achieve their best in life. And I want to bring about a fairer, more just, more equal society. That's what I've spent my whole life doing. And this, I travel all around the country, meeting people. Last night I was talking to a group of homeless people in Hastings, but also talking to people who are wanting to expand their work and their businesses. The two things actually go together. And so the wisdom that's there amongst people all over the country is something that absolutely inspires me. I go around with a notebook everywhere, little notebook. Got it here.
What are you going to write about us today?
What am I going to write about you? What a charming morning I've had here.
Are you sure?
Well, of course I'm sure.
Oh, good.
What wonderful Christmas decorations you've
Well,
got.
thank you.
And
We worked very hard.
what I do is I write notes about everything I do and everywhere I go. Because you know what? Everyone you meet knows something you don't know.
Yeah.
And I find that the endless fascination of finding something new from people.
Have you put your tree up, or are you going to wait in case you have to save it for number 10?
Well, I think we'll probably put one up about the 12th.
Oh, so yes, that's
Something
good timing.
so like that. We'll put one up. Yeah. At the moment,
where will it be?
At the moment, as you probably gather, we're a bit busy. So
No.
What
For
happens?
sure.
What happens to you if you don't win?
well, I'm intending on winning.
But if you don't?
Listen, my principles, my life, my work is the same whatever I'm doing.
Would you still be
Peace and
Labour
justice.
leader at the end of, if you were Prime Minister, or whatever happens on the 12th, would you still be Labour leader at the end of the next term?
I hope so, yes, because I feel I'm fit. I feel I'm quite young enough to do the job. Don't talk about age.
We did mention it.
Younger than you.
I'm very determined to carry out what we've got there, because we've got to change in our country. We've got to change our society. We cannot go on with this massive division between the richest and the poorest and call ourselves a decent, civilised country.
All right.
So I want to help people all across the country, and that's what I want our government to do. And you know what? I'm absolutely looking forward to doing it, starting in Christmas week.
All right.
Thank you very much
much.
indeed.
Thank you for your time.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me to your programme.